This is brought to you by WUNC Music. Bull City in the Basement presents Gift and Gab. I'm DJ Who for the crew. In this space with me, I have none other than the one and only Phil Cook.
Thanks for having me, Alan.
Absolutely. Thank you. And you're no stranger to WUNC, correct?
Boy, it's been a big year for me in WUNC, to be honest with you, bud. Yeah, I've been in there quite a bit lately.
Yeah, well, that's good. Well, glad to have you here on Gift and Gab. I want to talk to you. I'm going to try not to be so, I've been checking out all of your content, been checking out the interviews, so I don't want to ask some of the same questions. So I will, as a customary, I will start out with asking you, stuff like where you're from and, just tell people your story. Give us a brief background story.
Yeah. I was born and raised in northern Wisconsin in kind of a small farming town. When I discovered music, I was 13, 14, and I was alone in the town. I had no one to talk to about music. It was my own, it was just a private journey. Wow. Until I went to jazz camp. And I met all these people that would become my best friends, still to this day. And we eventually formed rock bands, majored in music, did all this stuff, yada, yada. Also, I come from a really big, amazing, loud, laughing, joke-telling family. So that's where you're going to hear that right now, as anyone does. It comes from there. And I moved here in 2005. And I moved here with a band. And then, I don't know, I think it's been pretty much been on the road since 2007. And I don't know, just been building it, just doing all the things, and loving Durham, putting down roots here. I don't know.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's it.
So you moved here with a band?
Yeah, I moved here with a band in 2005. We had a 26-foot Penske truck, and we left out of the driveway, said goodbye to our parents, and I put on our iPod Generation 2, whatever, shuffle, and I still haven't found what I'm looking for by U2 is the first song that came on.
This is so it's so different and unique because normally, you hear the stories over and over again. Band uproots from one area and maybe they move to San Francisco or maybe they move to New York or, I don't know, LA, somewhere. I've never heard Durham.
Honestly, people have asked me that for the last 17 years, and I haven't had a great answer, but what I can tell you right now is that it was divine. I'm supposed to be here. This is my chosen home.
So and I feel you on that, but I still have to ask, being that it's divine, where did that divine, all-knowing voice, how did it present itself to you?
I think what it was growing up where I grew up. We grew up in a place that was winter 6 months a year, and you either get a hobby or you get a habit. That's how I like to describe winter life. So music and shedding, all of that. But still, it was just everything was so far away. And the music that I fell in love with, my dad had a big record collection. It was just all so far away from where I was in space and time and states, region. And I just kind of had this inkling that we just had hit this glass ceiling in our town because we practiced 4 days a week. And we played one show a month, always sold out. And that was just the top where we were. And I was just in retrospect, we probably could have toured a bit and saw more. But I don't know, we just got this notion that it was just we had to start over somewhere and earn it from the bottom. And I felt LA and New York, fine. I'm just not a big city person. And, we all grew up in this small place. So it really felt a lot more just growing up with someone with mountains and ocean and a different climate and just cultures that we weren't familiar with. To just be able to do that felt like a divine challenge. And so it was challenge accepted. And I mean, honestly, all the colleges here, all the record labels here, all the bands we looked at on their tour, on their, what was that, Polestar? It used to be a page.
Yeah.
All those, everyone came through this area. So I figured, oh man, well, we'll definitely get a chance to see anyone we want to see, connect with them we want to see, and we don't have to move to like LA or like Nashville or Chicago or New York. And that seemed like this area just fit all those things. So we just took a chance, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So for me, being from North Carolina, I grew up just hearing all of the great names, the Nina Simones, the John Coltrane's, so many more people. But a lot of those people didn't stay. You know, a lot of those people, they found their rise to fame in other areas. So I think it's very interesting. In your case, it was like the opposite. Like you came here looking for something that I'm assuming that you felt you wouldn't find in other metropolitan areas.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We, and I think it was just anywhere we moved, we would have gone through some kind of a journey of starting over. But to have it be here was really cool because I think we just arrived at a time when, like, in the rock scene, like it felt like all this stuff happened in the 90s and then it kind of tapered off and then we got here. And there was sort of like a lot of musicians. All the restaurants were all populated with like musician waiters, musician barkeeps, all that. You know what I mean? Like that whole thing. So we were meeting all these people, and then it felt like there was just not a coalescing. That didn't happen until later. But it was great to be able to be here and see it kind of start to generate, And, living in Durham, it's just been amazing for me. I don't know, it's so funny because it's like, when I look back on it now, I still don't have a good answer other than like, we just wanted to take a chance on something, and we probably were going to move back within a year, and stuck around.
Well, it's interesting because I tell a lot of my musician friends, I've had conversations with them in the past, and I have had quite a few friends that have moved to different places because in different genres as well. A range of different genres, but the thing is always, this area can't give me what LA can give me, the networks, the labels, as well as like New York and Atlanta and places like that. But now looking here in 2022, and you're noticing all of those people in those metro cities are coming here to the Triangle. I even had a buddy who plays trumpet who lives in LA, and I talked to him from time to time, and I was telling him he should come here and visit, and he hollered in the background to his girlfriend. He's like, "Hey, we got to go to this place, North Carolina. It's the Triangle, it's Raleigh and Durham. They have lots of trees." So I thought it was very cool. I'm like, oh, we do have lots of trees.
We do. Yeah, it's awesome. And I mean, when you're talking about all this stuff where it's like, why to move to somewhere? Like, I mean, I can't actually minimize the longing for landscape. To be like, just like at the mountains, like, and the ocean in a half-day drive either way was just asinine. If you live in the middle of northern Wisconsin, it's like you have the Great Lakes, but it's like everything is so far away from there. And I love it for its beauty, and I appreciate it so much more now that I've been away from it for so long. But man, I mean, it means so much to me to be able to go to these natural places and these natural landscapes and just really take that in. I've never take that for granted. Like, it's such a cool thing to be able to do here.
I definitely hear it in your music, especially your last two albums. I was just a couple of days ago just reviewing it and just flipping back through it, and the amount of space, and that's you on piano, right? Yeah. So the amount of space that you incorporate into it, it just puts me in a transic state of just thinking about space and geography and also also thinking about nothing as well. And as a matter of fact, I hope it's not too early. I'm dying to do this. I'm gonna surprise you right now. Because you surprised me a couple years back. There was a time where I was really just struggling, trying to figure out, some things on the creative side. And I'm not sure if we had this conversation first and you did this for me, or was it afterwards? But you gave me this. Yes. So I want you to just talk about. I could talk days about how this has changed my life, but I want you to tell me how that changed your life.
Here's what I love about this.
Well, first we gotta tell the people what it is.
This is a book called Effortless Mastery. It's by a piano player named Kenny Warner, and his philosophy is really, he has kind of an Eastern approach and meditative approach to staying in the present moment with your creative and being able to be this open vessel. How do you do that? How do you practice being open to the moment? So it's a spiritual book in so many ways, but I really came back in, honestly, Alan, like this, it's like everyone that I went to college with was reading this for some reason, and so I got it and I read it, but I was 20, I was 19, and then I read it again, I think maybe a couple months before we had talked, and it made so much more sense now than it was. It's like I was so glad to read. It's like rewatching a movie, and you're like watching Pee-wee's Big Adventure. You're like, this is messed up. This is weird. I can't believe I loved this when I was a kid, dude. This is weird. I don't know why my parents let me watch this. This is weird. But differently, there's also where you just revisit something and like a song, and then you're older and you have more life experience, and then it just resonates a lot deeper because you just lived more. And that's where I was at when we talked, and I was like, there was a couple of lines in here that just killed me. He says something like, well, I texted you this one thing, I think I remember, but it was like, in fear we expect, and in love we accept. Mm-hmm. What a really amazing thing to write in a book about jazz improvisation.
Right.
Yeah. It's so cool.
Man. And honestly, now that I think about it, I definitely needed that book in undergrad. And a lot of my peers, in most jazz studies, departments, in universities all over, I think a lot of those musicians go through the same things with the expectations of trying to interpret, or not even interpret, just to regurgitate this information and have it sound exactly like the greats. You have to learn these Charlie Parker solos, and they have to sound exactly like Bird or Dizzy or Monk, or Oscar Peterson or whoever. And a lot of musicians, we just kind of just get into this dark space, because I'll never sound like John Coltrane. I'm not John Coltrane. I didn't have his experiences.
You are Alan Thompson, man.
Alan Thompson. And you're Phil Cook.
Yeah.
And you're here.
Well, the other thing he says in there that I really love, Alan, which you just touched on, it's cool, that's Thelonious Monk, also a North Carolina native, is just he just says this thing that I always want to say to educators. It's just that regurgitative approach, and how much that doesn't feed the human soul, as we need to have music as a companion, as an expression tool for the rest of our lives. And he says about Thelonious Monk, he says, I don't want to play what Thelonious Monk played. I want to feel how Thelonious Monk felt while he was playing. I love that so much.
Yeah.
What was he just feeling?
And I guess it's that thing that goes past pedagogy and looking in books and trying to figure out this stuff. There's just the life component. How's your life? And when I listen to your music, that's what I hear. I hear life. I hear just phases of life that you're just spewing out through these instruments. Yeah. Not instrument, but instruments.
Yeah, instruments.
What was your first?
Piano, all the way from the beginning, like 3 until I was 20. I had a little sidebar for a while in 7th grade. Like I told you, I was alone in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin with my musical journey. It was very private. I got really into blues harmonica when I was in 7th grade. So I was studying all these Chicago dudes, and I never would let anyone see me, because that means they were staring at my face with this little instrument. And I was like, At the piano, I could be like, no one can see me. You know what I mean? It's this
got
big
the Bill Evans thing going on.
So I was into that stuff, but it was just that. And then I right before I moved to North Carolina, I bought a banjo kind of on a whim. I got a tax refund, and that was just exactly the amount of money. I had a check about all it. I played a banjo. I was like, I don't know why I'm about to do this, but I bought a banjo, and I moved here. And so I picked up all these other instruments, but really it's it's the same thing for me. It's always the same thing. I'm just trying to play what I hear, and it's always singing for me, or whatever it is, piano, like dobro, harmonica, all of it is voice. We're trying to sing through the instrument, and so I just love being able to get closer to what I hear on the instrument, and that journey has fed all the other instruments. Like I'm a better piano player because I learned these other instruments, and I incorporate those I don't know, little nuances into my other instruments, and it's kind of makes a cocktail, a different cocktail, you know?
Yeah, so, and I remember when I was younger, some music instructors, they would teach us and they would say, "Hey, what instrument do you play?" "I play saxophone." "Well, what saxophonist do you listen to?" So of course I had my bag of saxophonists, but now as an older, more seasoned musician, I've learned to be influenced by things other than the same instrument.
Yes.
So I might be influenced by this conversation, and I
Yes.
might play something on the sax very reminiscent
Yeah.
of this conversation. And
Hey, you feed me every morning I have you on. I mean, this is like, I'm sure you can speak to this too, but like your journey with being on the air in the mornings, and like there's a sacred time. The morning is a sacred time. It's like people are just starting their day, and you have to get in tune with your community in a way that I've heard you hone for years now. And that is also jazz. You're also like playing what you hear up here. It's just coming from here, and you're just speaking it like into the things. And I'm wondering what that journey was like for you, because I can see a progression, and I love where it's going.
well, I learned a lot in 6 years, and and it got me here. So it's the journey is never ending, and I think as musicians we strive for our compositions to be reflective of the journey.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's just that simple. So, and I feel like you're one who you understand it the same way. I'll give you another example. I remember the first time I played with you. I'm gonna go back to 2018.
Woo.
People Are My Drug.
Yeah.
And I remember that experience. Like, this is crazy. First of all, I had to figure out who you were. I had to study your music. I did my research. I looked you up. I did like the whole journalist FBI thing. It's like, okay, Phil Cook, folk musician, American folk musician. But then I'm just hearing you on stage just interact so comfortably with all of these different musicians from other different backgrounds. I didn't feel like I was on a folk gig. I felt like I was in the Phil Cook experience. I felt like I was in like a tent revival. It was a very, very soul altering experience to be in that moment,
Oh. Well, it was so awesome to have you that night. And I mean, that was a cool night too, because we really had the full band, and we did a Prince cover that night, man.
I think we did. We
Wailed on
did.
that thing, man.
Wow.
Which was great. But, I mean, relationships are just key, aren't they? Like, in a scene, it's like the relationships you build. Like, it's just crazy when I think about a time that I didn't know Brevin Hampton. And it's crazy that there was a time that I didn't, because he's so in my life in a beautiful way that, like, I just can't picture not remember knowing him. But, Brevin is like somebody who, like, when I met him, I had this notion after I did this session with him where I was just like, I'm going to know this guy, I think. I like this guy's instincts. I really I like the way this guy talks with anybody he walks into about anything, dude. This guy is comfortable like me. This is great. And like that relationship musically has, he's taught me about Durham musical history, like, Central's like, the lineage that came out of Central, like all these other things, his mom's history, like his family, like all this other stuff. And I feel like he really pulled me into Durham, and took me under his wing in a way and introduced me to a lot of people. And that was that's been amazing, because it's really opened my eyes to how much musicianship happens everywhere here. And I'm in this weird position that I feel like really fortunate about, which is just like, because I play banjo, because I know the vocabularies of like folk and old time music, I like meet people that are in those scenes. I'm able to have like in witness the beauty of some of those things, like some of the people in there, and like the musicality they bring, and to appreciate it a lot. But it's funny to also just be somebody like, it makes sense in my brain perfectly that it's just like there's so much musicianship in this town, and these people over here don't necessarily know about how rich this other scene is over here. And I kind of have this like feeling like I really want people to really understand on a deeper level how lucky they are to live here, because of how much depth there is and how much cultural wealth there is in this city right here. And with a city that's changing so fast, it's like we need to find each other. We need to see each other. We need to know each other, and we need to support so that we can support each other. You know, because different scenes have some different needs, but like there are some real shared ones that people need to be able to get on board with. So I love, like, you know, having a band that's made up of just people who I just trust their instincts. I trust their instincts as people, the way they operate in their days. I trust their instincts, and I don't ever want to tell them what to play. It's all just like, here's my songs. Bring your best gut to it, you know, and like that's how my band is. Like that's how I lead. It's just more that I hire a bunch of band leaders, and they all know what to do, and then I don't really have to do much other than just enjoy it.
I felt so good playing with you all that night. It made me think in my head. I asked myself, is this how Branford felt playing with Sting during like Bring On the Night?
Yeah.
You remember that album, Bring On the
Yeah.
You just had all of these musicians together in this huge castle.
Yeah.
They did like a documentary with the album, and all of them, you know, had different roots in the American music, and you know, it was very killing. I felt like how I would imagine that felt that night. So I appreciate you sharing sharing that opportunity with me.
I haven't had a show with my band for so long. I'm ready. When I do, we're gonna do this again, dude. For sure.
For sure. So I have another question.
Yeah.
I sound like a kid. I have a question.
Excuse me.
Yeah. So, you know, you mentioned folk music, and it made me think about. Well, first of all, I didn't even think to, you know, check out, like, seriously, like, dive in until I met you, and diving in checking out some stuff, you know, it made me realize the intersections between folk, blues, and hip hop, and how even, you know, with the names are very organic. Hip hop was given that name within the community. You know, I don't know if I could say the same for jazz, because a lot of the earlier musicians like Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, they always spoke against it and said, you know, we don't call it jazz, we call it the music of Buddy Bolden, or the music of pops.
Yeah.
But, you know, with folk, hip hop, and blues, that's just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so just if you can just tell the people about your experiences with folk and also in those other genres, because it's brought you to some other places now. You know, I'm thinking about Spiritual Helpline and.
I think the communion of, you know, a shared moment with musicians that's not a gig are important moments in our lives. You know, when we're not getting paid, when we choose to be there because we want to be there, and it's our time, we want to be there. And those shared circles happen all over the place, all over the world, like right now even. They're happening. And that is something that I had to really curate with like a small group of people for the first 25 years of my life. And we made our own thing. We made our own, like, you know, we had improv games. We had that were like, we were ridiculous. We were really corny, isolated, very isolated, wintry people. And I'm thankful for it now, because I feel like it gave me a romanticized view of the outside world, which felt so far away all the time. And it was just, I only got it through books or the TV or through CDs or whatever it was. It was just never right there. So we had to create it. And, you know, that's, you know, something that I brought, that spirit. I feel like wherever I go, I bring that. I'm just like, I had so much fun doing that then. And then I come here, it's like, I think one of the first things I did, maybe this is maybe a good story. I had been playing my banjo every day, and it just got to a point where I was like, I mean, okay, I can fake it at least to do something. And my buddy was a writer for the Indie, and he said, hey, one of the guys who works at the Indie has this Halloween old time party, and he has the driveway is lined with old time musicians, banjo, upright bass, like wash tub, dude, like, you know, like guitars, fiddles, and there's cloggers, like, and they're like, you should bring your banjo and go. He wants you to come. I'm like, okay. So I show up to this thing. You know, this is the Halloween of 2005. Like, I've only been there for a few months. And it was such a beautiful experience, because all these kids were coming in. The candy bowl was at the end of the driveway. So the kids and the cloggers would take the kids, and they would dance them up to the candy bowl, you know, in their costumes and whatever. And they'd come back. But the feeling and the sensation of all those strings vibrating at the same time, that vibration that was happening collectively, felt so much bigger than anything I'd felt. It just felt like I was feeling like history. I was feeling like the presence of it. And when I think about like roots music, okay, like roots is thrown around a lot, like Americana is thrown a lot around now. But here's what I love about roots, Alan. Like, if you see a tree that's alive, and you're looking at this tree, that tree is alive because its roots are feeding it every single day. It's gathering everything from the ground, from the soil and everything. It's feeding that tree. If they were gone, the tree would fall over and die. So roots are a very present thing in a way that I think they're kind of relegated to like a past nomenclature in a way, like but it's not in that timeline. It's constantly present. So when I think about folk music, I consider hip hop folk music because we just haven't expanded our definition to include something that basically just means lowering the access so that people can participate it with whatever they have, like a turntable in their parents' living room, and invent a whole genre out of it. Yeah. That is folk music to me. So we've sort of relegated to like an acoustic guitar. It's so much bigger than that, you know, in the way I see it, you know.
I remember I heard a lyric from Ab-Soul. He's like this rapper from L.A., and he was actually on a song with Rhapsody, Al Rhapsody here in North Carolina, and he said, "Hip is for intelligent, hop is for the movement."
Yes.
And when he said it, it's like, oh my God, this hit, you know. I get it now.
Yeah.
I get it. But yeah, I love music.
Yeah,
I love it. And I love talking to you about music because I feel like we can go on and on for hours. I do want
to do. You know what's funny about really you and I? Like we like you and I like have this rhythm where like every 6 months we'll just like randomly one of us will call one of the other and we'll talk for like an hour on the phone. And
then we'll be like, hey, we should jam. But it's like I look at the conversations like we just jammed out in conversation.
We go deep right away. Like right away. Yeah. It's like, all right, this is cool.
So you know, your work with Spiritual Helpline, I remember you talking to me about a year ago about working with the Branchettes, and it opened my eyes to a whole nother area of gospel and spiritual music here in North Carolina. You gotta tell me and everybody watching your experience with that so far, because it seems like it's becoming like an ongoing thing.
Yeah. I mean, Spiritual Helpline, you asked me about, like, to talk about that experience, and it's been something that I'm still understanding what it actually really is, because it keeps shifting and growing. But I can tell you where it started. And it really started with, when I was a kid, I saw the movie Sister Act 2. That was the first time I heard gospel music. And the song called Happy Day by the Edwin Hawkins Singers, which is such a good song. It's got that awesome, like that, just when it goes, oh, happy day, and it does the second time where it does that 6 alt chord on it. It's like, it just hits so right. And I was like, what is that chord? What is that harmony? I was like, what is that? And I loved the harmony that, like, the way the voice leading works in gospel with the way that the harmony floats on top and how they don't have to all follow the same rules. It just, the way it happens together just does it for me. So
I got to pause right there.
Yeah.
So Sister Act was your first introduction to gospel.
Yeah, I would mean.
So all right. So I got to, and I hope this is not too much of a personal question, but what did you have, like a religion that you leaned towards, or
Presbyterian?
I
was Presbyterian.
Okay.
Yeah, I was the youngest member of my adult choir. I was when I was 13, 14, and everyone else was in their like 50s, like late 40s. Like my parents were in it, and I was just like the youngest kid there, and yeah, I mean, I just had developed a passion for harmony. So I remember this one time. The choir director picked this like spiritual, which is a real dice roll when you're in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, and you're picking from, I mean, even just the names of some of these people in the choir, like, could help just formulate, like Bob Kepsel, like like Vern Smozzle, like these people that are just like, I don't know, like can you roll the dice on Vern? Is he going to be able to hit that note? Is he going to be able to swing that eighth note? A, B, I have no idea. Can any of these things happen? I got up in front of the choir as a audacious, like 14-year-old and was just like trying to get him to just switch to clapping classically on 2 and 4 and things like this, you know, or I was just like, you know, but I was engaged in it because I cared so much about the harmony. And I really wanted it to sound well. And I had, you know, such a longing that was always there. And then when I found Aretha's amazing Grace record, which is still my still the top record of my life, is that record. And so that stuff like all set the stage for me to like really learn it and like learn the music, learn kind of how it's put together, but just to like see who the practitioners of it are. And from what I could just understand, you know, the staple singers like Mavis Staples, like how the staple singers sang was like, you know, just a different thing than how the Blind Boys of Alabama sang. And luckily, one of my childhood friends that I moved here with ended up becoming a really famous world rock star and won a Grammy for Best New Artist. And the Blind Boys reached out and said, "Would you produce our next record?" This is in 2011.
Wow.
Okay, and he called me right away and was like, "Phil, would you please come do this session?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do the session for sure." And you know, we did it up in Wisconsin, and it was a profound experience for me, Alan, because these men have been touring since the 40s. The institution of the Blind Boys has been around since like even the late 30s, from the Talladega School for the Blind in Alabama. And like these men were touring in a segregated South for like well over a couple of decades. They've seen what they've seen the country go through in the course of their careers is profound. And that kind of experience, just to be around somebody who can sing about that, let alone speak about it, is a real gift. And I went into it just being like, I'm so not good enough to be here. I mean, full on, in you know, like inferiority complex. Walking into it like I have no business being in this room with real gospel singers. But this cool thing happened. You know, I got to help select some of the songs and arrange them. And while we were like in there doing it, I was like warming up on just something. I was trying to work out this piano line and just getting the right. And one of the singers pulled the engineer aside and said, "Hey, who's that playing piano over there?" And he said, "Have him come in here." And so the engineer came out and said, "Hey, one of the Blind Boys wants to talk to you." I'm like, "Gosh, this is it." And he just said, "Hey," he's like, "Sit down here, man." He's like, "What's your name?" "Phil." And he's like, "Hey, Ricky, man, listen, man, where did you learn to play like that?" And I said, "I mean, to be honest, I mean, like listening to you, dude, like for real, like, I mean, you know, I mean, just listening and loving it a lot." And he said, "Man, you like play like the old way, and I haven't heard someone play like that for a long time." And he just said, "You really, I can tell you really love this music." And I'm like, "Yes, sir, absolutely." He's like, "Keep going, dude, keep going, do it." And like literally, like that conversation and his friendship since then, like that opened up me going home and being like, "Okay, I'm gonna just keep going. I'm gonna like start writing stuff that has this stuff in it," all the while knowing where it's coming from, knowing where the history is, like, you know, but like not being like, it's not for me because I'm from this small town, and it's not for me because I'm from this tiny place, and I'm not from this place. You know what I mean? And he just included me and he encouraged me, and that started Spiritual Helpline in that moment, to be honest with you, because that to me has been my exploration of relationships within the gospel world, within the faith-based world, especially within African American gospel music. And when I came to find out that I live in this city of Durham, and that the surrounding area here and this state in general in South Carolina is really still a raging hotbed for like gospel music in this place, I just started to be like, whoa. So fast forward, and I meet this woman through Music Maker Relief Fund. Do you know about New Music Maker?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that Hillsborough organization.
Right.
So I called them up and I'm like, I need to find a collaborator for this concert who would be willing to collaborate with a guy like me. And they said, Lena Mae Perry, here's her number. And I called her, talked to her on the phone. She said, that'd be fine. And I'm like, thank you, ma'am. She's like, we're going to rehearse at my house on Saturday. And I'm like, okay. So I get there, and as soon as I get there, she's like, okay, so we're going to do this song. Your part's up here. So she gives me like the alto part. Like I'm singing in my head voice this whole day with this 80-year-old woman and her accompanist. And I don't know what about it was just so wonderful from the get-go, but it was just like I was just so grateful to be there. And she trusted me with these parts. I don't know how I did, but she kept teaching me. And I was open to it every time. I'm just ready to wherever, I'm here. So she is really the heart of Spiritual Helpline's realization, because through her, my friendship with her over the last few years, and her getting to know my whole family. She's met all my cousins. She's met she met my grandmother, my last living grandparent. She calls my kids her grandkids. My kids call her grandma. And I've gotten to know her whole family. And we've made a film about her. And all these things happen because just through being in a relationship with her, I've seen how her faith works in her life. It's about the walk. It's not about the talk. It's about picking up the phone and calling people. It's about showing up when it's time to, when people need to be fed. It's about showing up when it's time to really, in song, the way her faith works. And just all, and her family, and how all these things work in tandem globally. And it's about just the way she walks in her life. And that includes, I get to be somebody who she includes in her family, which means, I get that love that she gives to all those people, and I know what that love feels like. And it's profound to me, the way, doesn't matter where she is. I've been with her in gymnasiums with kindergartners, and she just, totally has these kids on her side, as this, this diminutive, elderly woman, just, got them. We've been in festivals with thousands of people. We've been in churches. We've been in all these places. But, she just has this effect. And I really just wanted to basically start by saying, how come you don't have a live record? You're such a great live singer, and you've been in a band for 50 years. It's kind of a gospel staple to have a live record, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the spirit is in the live, you're capturing the spirit, it's there with the people. And so I kind of just got an Arts Council grant, and we went back to her home church in Newton Grove, and we made this live record. And that was really where it started. I had no idea. I was just going to try and have someone put it out or do something. And then after a while, I realized, I guess it's me, and whatever that means. Does that mean I have to start a label to do this? Okay. What does that mean? I don't know. So I had to figure out all this stuff from the beginning. I didn't design to start a label. I just started with her and my relationship with her, and then wanting to just make this record. And then I didn't know what to do after that. So since then, it's become we've made a film, and also recording podcasts, because I like to talk to people like you do. And
yes, you do.
Yeah, and other sorts of things. But I don't know what it's going to be from there on out. But it started with her, really,
But it's very profound what you just said. It just goes back to faith, just this idea of having a strong foresight in the midst of the unknown. And when I think about music, not even in one particular genre, but just all sorts of music, it seems like people really love songs about faith, and people really love people that speak on faith, even going past religion. Just some of my favorite songs, they're talking about faith. I remember Michael Jackson had this song. I think it was on the Dangerous album, called "Keep the Faith." And the chorus is "Keep the faith," and I remember I was just freak out when I heard the chorus. It was like a powerhouse song, or you hear songs like "Don't stop believe it, and I'm not going to be a singer right now, but yeah, but you get what I'm saying,
I
though.
do.
People are drawn to faith, and I think it's just that natural, it's the human in us that draws us to faith. Children, you have to have faith to be a child, as resilient. My wife says it all the time. Children are resilient. Well, you're on this earth for, under 10 years, and your whole life at that point is just trying to figure things out and understand things that we hold for granted. Like, I'm trying to figure out how to write my name, Faith.
Yeah. Kids is that's a great touchstone. I mean, we're both dads.
Yeah.
We
got to tap into the dad life.
But it's cool. It's cool to think about that because like part of faith too is that like getting up and having a new chance every day because you do have that foresight. And for me, my kids offer me that new chance to make better on whatever I didn't do yesterday. And I feel, and that has been something that's been such a gift. And part of the way my faith is deepened and strengthened is with that chance every day to do a little bit better than I did the day before. And I don't get, which is good.
So you released "People Are My Drug" in 2018.
Yeah.
It was in June, correct?
Yes.
I got married in May.
You did.
My wife is looking at me in the corner like, you better get it right. But yeah, there's this one song that really stuck out, "Miles Away," and it really made me reflect on marriage. This thing, I knew I was with the woman that I needed to be with for the rest of my life, and listening to that song made me reflect because she knew that I was an artist when she met me, and she knew how my brain worked. Like, it would just be all over the place. And you have lyrics in your song talking about being next to someone and, also being distant from them. So it made me reflect on marriage and how I'm sharing this life. And it's more so about me actually sharing this life. Like, I'm going to share my life. I have to do it all the way. And not be distant in my head, something that we can be so accustomed to doing as artists. You even talk about the earlier years when you're growing up in this town and you're like, you're just by yourself and, in your head. I'm in a whole nother life where I can't do that anymore. And, but for the better, I love this life. I love being a dad. I love being a husband. And I really appreciate what that song did to me.
Thank you. Very much. Yeah, I think that, the part about, presence, and what presence means, because it's like we definitely, when we're channeling, and we can feel it when we're present on stage, when it's happening.
Yeah.
Like when, and almost to the point where like, if you name it too loud, you lose it. Like, you know what I mean? It's like a balance. It's like a tightrope walk sometimes, So I mean, for real, when I was a kid, my mouth was open for the first 10 years of my life straight. Like, I was just a drifty kid, and, I didn't get diagnosed with ADD until I was 40. In 2020, actually, after I wrote that song, so many more things made sense. But it really is like my brain, and I know you can relate to this, but like, I can't turn off parts of it. There's not an off switch for some parts of it. It doesn't matter where I am, but like, if like I'm at a stoplight and the blinkers are going, I'm polyrhythming like, what is the blinker in front of me and my blinker doing, and when are they going to line up in phase with each other, because that's a rhythm thing. And then when like I hear a train go by and I hear that like sixth chord and the way it smears down, I'm just like thinking, I can't turn off that chord, analyzing in my brain. When I'm talking to somebody in a room and there's music playing, I am just like 4, 6, 2, 5, 1. I'm just like, I can't turn that off. I've just had to learn how to like live with it in a way that like works for me. You know what I mean? Because it's just constantly going and it's just there. So it's just kind of funny because a lot of people have had to deal with.
Well,
he's learning how to do that.
I've never been diagnosed with anything, but I'm a drifter mentally. Like, my mind goes so many directions, and I have to thank the people that are in my life, the people like my wife and even like my kids who just keep me grounded and just keep me focused, because it's so easy for me to just drift into so many different brain tangents. And like I'm one of those people. I have to have good people in my corner, like, you know.
Yeah. But you're also, I mean, you're also, this is also your gift, which is what's so beautiful too about, like, this is why your brain is your brain and why it's special, is that, like, when you're using it, and when you can lean in on knowing what makes your brain unique, it's like, yeah, it definitely is more liberating as I get older to just trust in the fact that, like, the people that love me anyway are the people that I choose, and they're the people that are patient with me and are a good mirror and reflective of me, but that also champion me and love me for who I am, that I'm enough when I walk in the door. And I love that about, I don't know, because when you're going and you need that. We need you to be out there doing your thing. The world needs you, Alan, to be doing your thing out there in the community in the way that you do and only you can do. And so there's something that's, like, cool about that too, because, I don't know. Yeah. So it's nice to have the full balance of all of it, where it's like, I'm doing it here, and my kids are helping me do it here. My wife's helping me do it here. Okay, we're all in a good zone here. I'm glad for my people,
I mean, well, while I'm doing that, I also need people to help bring me down from the moon sometimes. Like, I can't stay in the moon, Phil.
Nope, I can't stay in the moon.
Well, look, we could literally do this for hours.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe
Part 7.
Yeah, maybe we have to make a part 7. We have to have, like, a whole, like, just season dedicated to Who and Phil conversation. Do you know my nickname is Who?
Who?
Yeah, but so my WUNC music name is DJ Who for the crew, and I've actually had a few people refer to me as Who.
That's happening now?
Yeah, it's happening now, so I guess I'm getting used to that. I kind of like it. I was like, Who?
Can I ask you a question before we're done?
Sure.
What are the terms of endearment? What are the nicknames that people you love call you in your life?
Well, my kids call me Alan.
They call you Alan?
They call me Alan. They call me Alan when they're upset with me. So,
how about nicknames from your family? Any aunts or uncles? Anyone that?
Well, I never really had my dad, for some reason, he called me ATL, which is like, most people would think that's the abbreviation for Atlanta. I don't have any super strong ties to Atlanta, other than me and my mom lived there for a few years while he was working in Puerto Rico. Everybody in my family, like my family, everybody calls me Alan Michael. Right. Michael is my middle name. Yeah. So, there was like this whole thing where my grandmother, she was Lassie Mae. I had an uncle named Donald Ray. My dad, he didn't have a middle name, so they called him Michael Boy. And they called my aunt, his sister, they called her Carolyn Girl. So there was like this need to refer to people by their first and middle name. So if you ever come home with me to the cookout or Thanksgiving, you're going to hear Alan Michael. Yeah. But it's from the older people.
Yeah, from the older people.
Yep,
that's
elders.
Cool, man. That's cool. Yeah, I like what people call each other when they.
Yeah, my friend John in Zoo Crew calls me Schmeegan.
Vegan?
Because
drummer John?
Yeah. Because I had a period where I was vegan. I was like the first, because at one time we were like the vegan band.
Yeah.
And I was like the first guy in that band to go vegan. But then it's just like, I just went off of it that fast. Like, after all of them decided to become vegans, it's like, nah, I'm back. I'm back to eating this pork. I'm back to eat. I need a Q dog.
I need a barbecue restaurant, actually.
Well, look, we gotta head out. Thank you so much, Phil. Before we head out, are there any last words that you want to say to the people?
Well, I'm just so glad to be able to do this and spend time with y'all and see you, Kat, and and see you, Al. It's like, it's great. It's awesome. Long time listener and just love what you do, bro. And it's we'll just get up again. Part 2 to be continued, man.
Part 2. Thank you, Phil. Another Gift and Gab under the wraps. Peace.